Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Miguel, and in this video we will create our first application. And so let's get started and execute Lazarus. And when starting Lazarus, you will see some different windows, and I want to give a short explanation what it is. On the top there is one, okay, not for VMware, but on the top there is one really important window. This is the main window of the Lazarus IDE and shows a main menu featuring all needed core functionalities of Lazarus, in toolbar menu for fast access, and this kind of interesting tab control featuring so-called components which are used for design time development. But we will take a look at it later. On the left side there's the so-called object inspector. It shows different so-called components and their properties. And properties are some kind of attributes, for instance in text, but also events and favorites and more. In the center there's the source editor, and this window is used to develop applications, so writing the source code itself. You will not understand the source editor at the first time, but we will kind of start slowly. And there's another window, really interesting looking, and has in caption something like Form 1. It has grid points, and this window is for designing your graphical interface. It's called Form Editor, and your final application will look similar to this window. But I don't want to lose so much words, so let's get started and just execute the application. To do so, just press F9 or go to the Run button. This will also show another window called Messages, and this tiny little window is used to find problems with your source code or with your project. It shows whether everything runs great or whether you are struggling with errors. And you may realize that there is another window. And this window is actually our final application. So it's an own executable called Project 1. And this executable looks similar to the form editor. But actually this application is quite useless because it has nothing to do. And we want to change it. So let's close this window, and then Lazarus will ask or give in short information that the execution of your project has stopped, but we can just click on Do Not Show this message again. So let's do something interesting. We need some kind of component that the user can access our application and do something cool. And this component could be something like a button. So the user could click on a button and our application will do something interesting. And you can find this button in this component page control in the page standard, and there is a component called T-button. And what we now will do is we just left click on this button and left click on the form. And this will create a button. And we can move this button around, we can change the size, and we can do fancy stuff. And this button will be in our application. So run your application again and you will see the button. But nothing happens, so let's change it. In the object inspector, there's not only the form, there's also the button. And the object inspector shows properties, events and more for each component. So when you click on the button, you can realize that the property list changes. And there are some interesting properties. One is the name, and another one is the caption. And let's change the caption to "click me" and press enter, and you can see that now the button changed. But this button does nothing, and so let's change it. The object inspector does not only shows properties, also events. And something should happen after clicking on the button. And this after clicking on the button is in so-called events. Events are kind of procedures or codes that will be executed after something special happened. And there are lots of events, like on change bounds, on click, but also something like on mouse move if somebody moves the mouse on the button. But the most important one for this button is on click. And we want to tell the application that something should happen after clicking on the button. So let's double click on click, and this will automatically create in procedure. And the source editor is not understandable for a beginner. It shows some confusing stuff, but the most important one for beginning and for this video is this procedure. Let's minimize it. This procedure is, the declaration of this procedure starts with a keyword procedure, with a name, with some parameters, and with a begin and an end block. And everything between begin and end will be executed line by line after clicking on the button. And let's do something. Let's change the property caption. The button should display something like thanks. And to change this property, we have to kind of access this button. And to access a component, you will need to use the name. And the button is called button1. Let's rename this to button test and press enter. And you can see that the object inspector has now a different name. So let's change this button. And so we have to start with the button. So button test. And now press point. And after waiting a second in the default configuration of Lazarus, there will be a window with auto completion. And there is a lot of interesting stuff. There are procedures, properties. Wait a minute, properties. And we can simply access these properties. So let's search for caption and press enter. And now Lazarus automatically had created a colon and an equal character. And every time if you want to do an assignment, so if you want to change something, you will have to put the thing you want to change on the left side. In the middle, you have to write in a colon and an equal character, and then you have to set the new value. And in the end of each line written, or each command, you have to write in semicolon. And we want to change it to thanks. But we can't just write thanks and execute this application. The message window will say identifier not found, thanks. So we have to tell Pascal that thanks is not an object or an kind of value. And we have to say that it's in text expression and so-called string. And if you want to assign in string, you have to write it in the simple quotation marks. And you can find the simple quotation marks on the left side of your enter key, and you have to press shift and the hashtag. And this is everything the application should do. Let's just execute the code. And after clicking on the button property called caption, so button test caption, will now be assigned to thanks. This is our first application. But somewhere in a law is written that your first application has to display hello world. And we want to do this. We not only want to say thanks, we want to do something more interesting. We want to change in text of another component. And so let's create a T-label. This T-label does not have the property. Okay, let's start simple, and let's rename this label to label test. And this label also has a property called caption, and we could change it to click the button, you maniac. And we also want to change the caption of the label test. So basically just do the same stuff again. Label test point caption colon equal character and then hello world. And of course the text in simple quotation marks, and you need a semicolon at the end of the line. So let's execute this application, and this is our first application displaying hello world. But we want to give it to a friend to show our kind of achievement, and so go to project, save project as. Let's go to a folder where you want to save it. I will save it on my desktop and call it tutorials. Now I call it Lazarus -2. And I will rename this project to hello world. Press save. And now it will ask you to save in so-called unit 1. You can just press save. And our application was saved on the specific folder. But there's nothing we can give to our friend, so we have to so-called compile the application. We have to convert this application to an executable. And to do so, you could just run the application, and you will find the application here. Or you could go to run and compile will also create the application. Currently this application is quite big, but at this point it does not matter. Later on I will show how to customize the IDE and how to also change the so-called debugger path and information of the project settings to also make it in small executable. But this folder now contains our project and the executable. We could copy it, give it to our friend, and he or she could execute it and run our fancy application. This folder contains a library folder with some compiled information for our target. In my case it's a Windows 32-bit application. It contains the icon, also some project information, the unit itself. So the unit is what we had modified. Here's our code. And I think we will take a look at the files in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you had fun creating your first application. And if you have a question or a problem, you can simply write an email to my email address. It's contact@Devstructor.com. You can also download the source from my website and open it in Lazarus. To do so, you can go to Project, Close Project, Open Project, and now navigate to the path and open it. I hope you enjoyed this video and that we will see us in the next chapter. Bye.